Moving on to a lighter note, though. Speaking of, it kind of has to do with your topic of loyalty, Jordan. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so my topic is gamer loyalty, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of talking about, voting with your wallet and stuff like that. It's not as much what I'm talking about here. It's more, I kind of made some bullet points. It's more just about, like, how loyal you are to certain parts of the gaming industry and how much you feel connected to that in a way like you're going to support this for this amount of time, or you're going to support these guys whenever their next game comes out. So my bullet points here are, do you follow developers? Do you follow publishers? Do you have loyalty to first parties? Loyalty to consoles themselves? And then loyalty to fellow gamers. So we can go back to that. I don't expect you to remember all those. But first, follow devs. So, for example, I mentioned this before the podcast, but like Supergiant Games, right? They're an indie developer. Their first game was Bastion, which I talked about earlier on the show. Just beat that. Then they came out with Transistor. Both of those games are fucking amazing, and I love almost everything about them, like how they play. They're critically acclaimed, all that. So they have a new game called Pyre coming out next year, I think. And I'm buying it day one, no matter what. Like, I don't even have to know about reviews or whatever. These guys have my loyalty, because it's a big thing for me with indie developers, where I see somebody doing something and I'm like, I like what you're doing and I will support the shit out of you, because these are the guys that need that support, and these are the guys that are, working their little fingers to the bone to just get whatever they can and make the best game they can. So I would say I have a lot of loyalty to developers, especially indie ones. So I guess let's start off with that. Loyalty to developers.
Okay, so for me, I just want to be completely clear. I'm on my way to becoming a game developer, so I might have a different outlook on this. But for me, so with loyalty, it comes down to people who make a good product and people who are trying something different. So for me, I have a couple of developer loyalties specifically. One of them is Play Dead, which recently came out with Inside. I will buy their third game no matter what. For clarity's sake, I got a review code of Inside. I was going to buy it anyways, but we were lucky enough to get a review code, which is awesome. And Limbo is one of my favorite games of all time, now being passed by Inside. Their third game is a day one purchase for me. They're an awesome company. They do such great experiences. Second is Shovel Knight. Jakob Games, with Shovel Knight and Shovel Knight 2, hopefully. A couple of factors. A, their gameplay is phenomenal. What they're doing is great. I think they're taking the old and making it new again. And the fact that they have great post-release content. I think that's a huge thing that sticks to me. It's like, not only am I paying for what I'm getting at release, I know that I'll have greater experiences in this game even after a year or 2 years down the road. For me, even though I haven't finished Witcher 3, I do know that I will buy Cyberpunk 2077 day one, because I know I'll get $60 worth. That's one thing that CD Projekt Red
more
has
than that.
Huh?
Okay, more than that.
Yeah, that's one thing that CD Projekt Red has basically told the industry is, you know what? We could easily make our games $80, $100, but they're $60, and you're going to get what you want out of it. And we've talked about this before, but the whole argument of it being too dense, I think that's a baby cry argument. I think that you can make the game as dense as you want it to be,
Yeah, you don't. No one's forcing you to discover all those question marks.
Yeah, so that shouldn't be a negative at the game. That should be a negative on yourself. I have that problem a lot, where I completionist things, and it sucks, but it's just the way I am, and I'm not going to knock a game for it. As far as other developers, I don't think there's necessarily anybody off the top of my head. I used to be really loyal to Infinity Ward. And I kind of see that same loyalty in Respawn, considering a lot of those guys from Infinity Ward are now with Respawn. I love Titanfall. I bought that day one. I'm really excited for Titanfall 2. I'm going to be buying it over Battlefield 1. So I guess I would say I have a loyalty to Respawn. I'm excited for specifically their Star Wars game. I think it's going to be awesome. Not too many, just because a lot of developers are hit and miss. I like Rockstar. I wouldn't say I'm loyal to them just because I don't know when their games are going to be coming out. Their games are always solid, and then I think my least loyal company is probably Valve, because I don't know when I'm ever I don't like to get invested in their series, because then they never finish them.
Yeah, they should I don't think there's they. Okay, they deserve gamers' loyalty like the least out of any company, in my opinion, because they've basically just become they like kind of sold out. You know, once they just figured out they could just start making money off of Steam and microtransactions, they're like, yeah, we're not making games anymore, even though you guys are the ones that got us here by buying all our games up until this point.
Yeah, that's it for my developer loyalty. I want to get into the other ones after Dom has his spiel about his developers.
So for me, there's not as many. Naughty Dog is the first and most obvious. Whatever they put out next, I'm buying no matter what, even if it's Jak and Daxter, Jordan.
God damn it.
Other than that, I really like Bethesda Game Studios specifically.
Well, that's a good one too. That's a solid
Yeah,
one.
just every one of their games has done it for me. And actually, first thing I wanted to say was there's never anything wrong with loyalty, I don't think, unless it's blind. Like everything that all three of us have said so far is based on track record.
Yeah.
And that's when these companies have earned our loyalty, right? Based on what they've done, in our opinion, which is, for example, why I bought the season pass for Fallout 4, because Bethesda has a track record of releasing like huge amounts of DLC. That's good quality DLC. Normally, I don't buy season passes. That was a very rare occurrence. So, yeah. And then even Bethesda as a publisher too, I'm identifying with a lot of their other games right now too. So Doom and Dishonored, and I just like everything they're putting out. It's just they speak to me for some reason. Todd Howard specifically is just
So going back to developers, he's probably the one single developer in the industry as a single person that I trust the most out of anybody. I will walk off of a bridge for Todd Howard. I love that man so much.
He could sell me a ketchup popsicle.
Yeah. I love Todd Howard.
Never heard of one of those.
He's definitely the one person I look up to in the industry the most, and I want to. He's who I aspire to be.
Now, you could run into problems when people are just blindly loyal and just supporting things that aren't good, and they know it, but they're just fanboys or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of like maybe you should step back and be a little more objective. But
what about From?
I think they're
for you personally.
That's a tough one, especially because they've said they're done with the Dark Souls style of game, and historically they've done like weird mech games and a few other things that didn't even like remotely pique my interest.
I think they'll return to it. I think they'll try their neat experiments, and they're like, dude, we need some cash. Let's go back to Dark Souls. Yeah,
but because what they're gonna do next is probably gonna be very different. I'm not gonna. I
still think you're gonna get what. You're gonna get plenty of Dark Souls vibes.
I don't think you're not loyal by not buying every game the studio produces. I think that's a different thing there.
Yeah,
you can be supporting them with word of mouth. Telling people. I talk on this show all the fucking time about CD Projekt Red. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it at this point, but
you can be loyal by consistently saying, "Hey, I want you guys to go back to Dark Souls. I'll support you guys for Dark Souls. I'm loyal to you guys because you guys make great Dark Souls games." That's being loyal too. So.
And I voted with my wallet there, buying all the Dark Souls games and
Bloodborne.
Yeah.
I think CD Projekt Red's a great example because I don't think there's anyone in any developer in the industry that deserves gamer loyalty more. I think they've proven that so much with Witcher 3. The value that you get in the game, the value that you get in the expansion pass, and of course all the free DLC, plus all the work that they've put into their patches, man. Like nobody puts that much work into patches. When was the last time you heard a AAA developer a year after their game came out completely revamp the UI for their game in a massive RPG? Like that's unheard of. So I think they really deserve it.
Even the small things, like all the extra stuff they jammed into the game case if you bought it physical.
Yeah, the free DLC, dude. All the 16 or 12 pieces of free DLC. Like and the reason they did this, I think, is because CD Projekt Red wasn't a household name, and they're like, we're proud of this game. Witcher 3 is a hell of a game. We're going to make people know who we are. We're going to be an industry leader, and they earned that,
They're like the perfect girl. They're like the girl that is like gorgeous and has an amazing personality and is like such a great girlfriend and whatever, and you're like, how are you even real?
Yeah.
How do you even exist? Aren't you like a paradox or something?
Well, it's because that girl existed in your school, but you never noticed her, and then one day you actually had a conversation with her, i.e., Witcher 3, and then you're like, oh yeah, now I realize, yeah.
One day she released one of the best RPGs of all time, and you're like, hey, you're pretty fucking hot.
So the second part of this, I don't know if this is the second part on your list, but I want to talk about this because I think this is a huge part of the loyalty. Console loyalty or platform loyalty?
Yes.
For me, it's a tough road. So I love Xbox, and I'm happy with my Xbox One, and I never take back my idea of getting an Xbox One. I'm not mad that I didn't get a PS4. I'm a little frustrated I don't currently own a PS4 because I would like to own both, but I never am against my choice that I made. That being said, though, if when that choice came down and my friends would have went to PS4, I would have gone to PS4 too. I don't really necessarily align myself with a console per se. I do enjoy the achievements and everything, but I am where the best experience is. So for me, all my friends bought Xbox One, so I bought an Xbox One. But if you guys have remembered, I owned a PlayStation, I owned a PS2. I never owned an original Xbox, you know?
So you're bridging less into loyalty to consoles and more into loyalty to fellow gamers.
Yes.
Like your buddy gamers, I not just like, oh, this random dude on PSN, I'm loyal to him.
Yeah, and as I get older, obviously that stuff tends to change because there's less people who are able to be on as often and stuff like that. But still, like, it's where I know I'm going to have the best experience moving forward. Exclusives definitely are a thing I think about, but it's never like a primary factor in what console I buy. If I could have it my way personally, I would have one unified console where Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo all publish that platform. I would love that the most, you know. But yeah, I don't consider myself loyal to one or the other. I do argue a lot for Xbox, but I don't consider myself an Xbox fanboy by any means, or a like anti-PlayStation.
So I'll jump in because I'm a little bit different. I'm pretty much a console brand slut, I guess would be the right way to put it, right? Started out N64, jumped over to PS2, you know, then from there jumped over to 360, and now I'm back to PS4.
Yeah.
Dom's like a doorknob. Everybody gets a turn.
Exactly. I've been all over the place. I have absolutely no loyalty to a console brand. So for me, it's just PS4 was the better choice objectively at the time, and I had just gone through, 4 Red Ring 360s, and like, nope, get the hell out of here with these.
Plus the terrible launch announcement by Don Matrick.
That was the bigger piece of it for me too. But even looking back at that though, I kind of have like some disloyalty or whatever the reverse of that you'd call with Microsoft, because of, even though like each of those red rings were replaced for free, it was like 3 weeks by the time I shipped it out.
Yeah.
Or rather, they shipped me the box. I shipped it back. I shipped it to them, and then they shipped me a fixed one.
It was a headache that you wouldn't have had with PS3.
There were literally months, 3 months total probably, where I didn't have the console that you know what I'm saying? And not first world problems, of course, but it's just, even though I, statistically, like the Xbox Ones are way more reliable, it's just, I'm still always going to have that in the back of my head, like, oh yeah, this was crappy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think, for me, I wouldn't consider myself a console slut by any means, but I would say I am platform agnostic, as some gamers like to say. How
about this? So I'm like the doorknob, or like, the slutty girl in high school who just gets around and it's dirty. You're more like a world traveler.
Yes.
Going to different countries.
I'm very much cosmopolitan when it comes to my consoles.
Yeah.
So really, I've been a PlayStation guy since I got my PS2. And that was actually, I think I mentioned this before, by the end of a console generation, I like to have all the consoles in that generation. Maybe I don't start off with all 3 consoles.
Yeah, same.
But
I'm exactly like you with that, yeah.
I'd like to get to them at some point. And then sometimes, that's great because you buy like an Xbox 360 at the end of the generation and you got all these fucking awesome games to play through. But
that's when the value's the best.
Exactly. Very true. So yeah, I got, during the PlayStation 2 generation, the PS2 was the last of the 3 consoles that I got, but it was also, I think, the most expensive, if not very close to the original Xbox. And once I got that PS2, I was pretty much locked in. I never had a PS1. I had a really close friend neighbor that I went to their house a bunch and played PS1. But yeah, man, once PS2 came around, I started, my first console was an NES that my dad handed down to me. Then my first one that I owned, brand new, was an N64. So I was kind of Nintendo before that. And then we got a GameCube, and then an Xbox, and then a PS2. But like I said, once I got to PS2, I was like, yeah, dude, this is where it's at for me. And so we had an Xbox 360 originally for the family just because PS3s were so goddamn expensive.
Yeah.
But then once they came down to 300, I bought myself a PS3 so that I could take to college and have that as my main console. And since then, I've been working on trophies. I've got like 1,300 trophies at this point, and PlayStation is my system. I am like a PlayStation dude. And yeah, my first console next generation, if that's a thing, is going to be the PlayStation, just because they've done so well with PS4. And even though they screwed a lot of stuff with PS3 up, I still think that's one of the greatest consoles of all time, if not the greatest console of all time.
That being said, your game of the year is Quantum Break. So, like, that just shows that you, yeah.
Biggest issue I have with PS4 is the, practically abysmal first-party lineup and exclusive lineup.
So far.
But yeah, I would say so far, yeah, but we're, 3 years into the console generation. So yeah, as far as loyalty to consoles, I would say at this point in my life, moving forward, yeah, I'm going with PlayStation just because they've proven themselves to me.
Don't you think so? Earlier we were talking about blind loyalty. I think blind loyalty isn't really a huge thing with developers. I think it's a huge thing with consoles. Yeah. I think blind loyalty runs so rampant in the console market. I'm fine with somebody saying PlayStation is better than Xbox and having an argument, or argument's a bad word, having a discussion about it and pointing out things. That's completely fine. But you run into so many people, and it's not just PlayStation, Xbox guys do it the same thing. They're just like, discount anything you say, that's their console, or that, Microsoft does nothing wrong, Sony does nothing wrong. And that's
console wars.
Yeah, it's so dumb. If you were smart, you'd want both things to succeed because, a rising tide raises all ships. So.
And then there's people like Colin and Greg who they're very aware of shortcomings, with their preferred platform. Like they talk about all the time how shitty it was during the PS3 era, how there were outages and this and that. They always complain about it. They're like, yeah, well, we stuck through it, but they were still objective, to those issues and acknowledge them. But they were still loyal enough to keep with that ecosystem, which is much better. And then also the other thing I wanted to point out is that we're going to see a lot more platform loyalty as people buy more and more digital games. Because that's something, especially going forward where everything's going to be backwards compatible probably forever. That's going to be a huge selling point. Like, well, yeah, I have a PS4 and I kind of want the new Xbox, but I already have 30 digital games on PS4 that won't carry over to the Xbox, right? I mean, if you could always, of course, keep your old console too, but a lot of people trade them back in or whatever it is. But it's like people who don't want to switch from iPhone to Android because they've already bought a bunch of apps.
Yeah, the legacy program there. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part.
The new thing.
Yeah, like PS3, all the PS Plus games you get, all the digital games you buy. Then I move over to PS4 and I start buying more digital games. Like, yeah, at this point I am kind of locked in. I mean, I buy games digitally on Xbox, and so when I get an Xbox big boy or whatever, then I can, continue that legacy as well. But yeah, I think that's a very good point, Dom, is digital games are going to start kind of locking people into their systems more from generation to generation. And
the online services will too. If you have a huge gamer score and a bunch of friends and, or a bunch of trophies, a bunch of platinums, you're not going to want to start playing games on a different platform where you can't get a trophy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the closing thought here, personally, the way I feel is like your loyalty should be earned, not given,
Yeah, and that's why, I talk about like CD Projekt or Supergiant Games, Yacht Club's got my vote, Drinkbox has got my vote. Yeah, the list could go on and on and on. Most of the Sony first-party studios have proven themselves with their track record to where, when we were talking about Uncharted 4 a little ways back, Jared, you were saying, if I'm really not into it, why did I buy it? And it's because I do have a certain amount of loyalty to Naughty Dog because they're part of the reason that I got into video games in the first place. So, sure, I'm not in love with what they've been doing since they left the Jack series, but there is a certain amount of loyalty there where I'm like, you know what? You guys still got my heart. So
I like this topic. That was good.
Thank you.